Their names were Daniel and Maylene, two Filipino teenagers who grew up on the streets of Manila. They were not professional singers. They never went to music school. They never had the luxury of microphones or stages. Their stage was the busy streets, their audience the strangers rushing past, their payment a few coins and the occasional smile. When they stood before Simon Cowell and the other judges, they looked both nervous and grateful. Daniel held Maylene's hand tightly. The lights above them were bright. Simon leaned forward, his sharp eyes studying their faces carefully. There was something about them, something quiet but powerful. Simon asked gently, "Where are you from?" Daniel answered softly, "We're from the Philippines." Maylene added, almost whispering, "We are survivors." That word, survivors, echoed through the entire theater. It wasn't a word used for drama. It was the truth. These two kids had faced hunger, storms, and a life that demanded too much from children. They lived through nights with no roof over their heads, mornings with no food, and days filled with songs because singing was the only thing that made the pain a little less heavy. The crowd fell silent again as the music began to play. It was a slow piano intro, something gentle, something that could hold the weight of their story. Then Daniel started singing. His voice wasn't loud or forced. It was soft, real, and filled with every moment he had ever survived. It was the kind of voice that grabs you by the heart before your mind even understands why you're crying. Maylene followed. Her voice soared like a bird finding its sky after years of being caged. It wasn't about perfection. It was about truth. The two voices blended together like they had been made for each other, like broken souls singing to heal the world. Within seconds, people in the audience began wiping their tears. A woman in the second row covered her mouth in disbelief. A man in the back stood up, hands pressed to his chest. Even the judges, known for their critical, often harsh reactions, were stunned. Sofia Vergara whispered something softly, Heidi Klum blinked away tears, and Howie Mandel simply shook his head in awe. Simon Cowell, the man who rarely lets emotion break through his cool, composed exterior, was visibly moved. His lips parted slightly, his eyes softened, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't interrupt. He just listened. He let the music wash over him. As the duet reached its chorus, the emotion in their voices climbed higher and higher. Maylene's voice cracked, not from a mistake, but from pure feeling. Daniel squeezed her hand as he sang the next line. The entire audience was now crying. It wasn't a sad cry. It was a cry that comes when you witness something too real, too human, too beautiful. The song ended with a long, trembling note. And then, silence. A silence so deep you could feel every heartbeat in the room. Then, a roar of applause. The entire theater stood to its feet. A standing ovation that lasted longer than anyone expected. Daniel and Maylene stared at each other in shock. Tears streamed down Maylene's face. Daniel looked up at the ceiling, his hands shaking. For a moment, it was clear, they weren't just contestants. They were finally seen. They were finally heard. Simon was the first judge to speak. He leaned forward, his voice unusually gentle. "I've been doing this a long time," he said. "I've seen a lot of auditions. But what you two just did, was one of the most emotional things I've ever witnessed." He paused. His eyes were still fixed on them. "You're not just singers. You are warriors. You sang like people who've lived. And you reminded all of us why music matters. It's not about notes. It's about truth." Heidi spoke next, her voice trembling with emotion. "You two are so young, but your voices carry the weight of something so deep. This was pure magic. Thank you for sharing your story with us." Sophia wiped a tear from her eye and said, "I don't even know what to say. I just want to hug you both." This was the kind of performance that makes this show special. It touched all of us. Howie smiled warmly. "You guys didn't just sing. You healed people in this room today. That's bigger than any competition." Then Simon did something no one expected. He reached over, pressed the golden buzzer, and in an explosion of golden confetti, Daniel and Maylene fell to their knees. They hugged each other tightly, sobbing as the confetti fell like a golden rain. The crowd screamed. People held up their phones to capture the moment. Some hugged strangers next to them. It was one of those rare moments where the world seems to pause, when you realize you've just witnessed history being made. Backstage, the crew rushed to hug them. Their translator explained how much this meant to them. For the first time in their lives, these two kids who sang for survival were now singing for the world. As the camera followed them behind the stage, Daniel whispered to Maylene, "We did it. Mama would be proud." Maylene nodded, still shaking. This is for everyone who forgot what hope feels like. Their story went viral overnight. Within hours, millions of people around the world watched their performance online. Comment sections were flooded with messages from strangers who said the duet helped them find strength in their own struggles. Some said it made them cry. Some said it made them believe in hope again. Music critics called it the most emotional performance in AGT history. But for Daniel and Maylene, it was more than a performance. It was their life's pain and beauty poured into one song. As the competition moved forward, the two continued to shine. They didn't have fancy clothes or expensive backing tracks. What they had was soul. Every time they sang like it could be their last time. And people felt it. Simon often watched them backstage, proud but also deeply moved. He knew talent when he saw it, but this was more than talent. This was a voice that could change hearts. As the finals approached, their story became a beacon of hope for millions. They dedicated their last song to all the kids living on the streets who dream without having a bed to sleep on. When they sang that night, the world watched. And once again, no one could hold back their tears. Simon gave them a standing ovation himself. And when they walked off the stage, hand in hand, the lights of the theater reflected on their faces, not just as contestants, but as symbols of strength, resilience, and the power of never giving up. Their story reminds us that music is more than sound. It's the voice of the soul. And sometimes, those who've been through the darkest nights create the most beautiful songs. As the outro plays, imagine their faces as they look out at the crowd, smiling through tears, as the golden confetti falls again. Their voices remain in the hearts of everyone who heard them, not because they were perfect, but because they were real. And that, more than anything, is what makes legends. Thank you for watching this incredible story. If you felt something tonight, if your heart was moved, then you already know the power of their song. This is the kind of moment that lives forever. Stay tuned for more unforgettable performances and powerful journeys from around the world. Until next time, keep believing in hope, keep holding on to your dreams, and never underestimate the strength of a voice that refuses to be silenced.